All right. Might want to let some of the grown-ups sit down. No, you can leave it open, otherwise it'll be too hot. This is the only building that doesn't have AC. Well, Deacon John's doesn't either,
Where did they transport this home from?
but this house was located, do you know where the Battle Creek Arboretum is? It's about 5 miles
Okay.
west of here. So it was donated by the, what society is that? The Historic Society of Battle Creek. And they took it apart log by log, and they brought it here and rebuilt it. And as you can see, they had wallpapered it. They couldn't get all the wallpaper off. Some of the wallpaper's still on here. But they took it down to as natural as they could, and you can see it was hand hewn. So they would have oops, my hand is coming off. They'd have an axe like this, and they would end up chopping. So they'd go chop, chop, chop to make them square. And I don't know about you, but I think that would be a lot of work. Yeah. Oops, sorry, my bad. Okay, in this house, no Seventh-day Adventists ever lived here, but it was built in the 1850s, so it's the right time frame. So there were people in the area that were living in houses like this, and it's where we tell the story of the most honest man in town. Now, there was a retired sea captain by the name of Joseph Bates. Anybody here like to ride on boats? Yes. He was a sea captain, and he would travel all around the world as a captain of a ship. Now, he retired after he earned $10,000. So that would be like a couple $1 million to us today, right? And he retired, and he learned to love God, and he learned about the seventh-day Sabbath. Now, he was so excited about the seventh-day Sabbath that he wanted to share it with the world. And so he said he lived in Massachusetts, Fairhaven, Massachusetts. He said, I'm going to go as far west as I can go so I can tell people about the Sabbath. So he went as far as he could go, and that brought him right here to Michigan. Because at that time, Michigan was the West. Okay?
Midwest.
And so when he got here, he was actually over by Berrien Springs, and it's just a little south of there, and God gave him a dream. And in his dream, he was told that he was to share the message of the Sabbath in this certain town. And he saw in his mind what that town looked like. But before God told him what the name of the town was, he woke up. And he was like, Lord, you want me to take the message to this town, but I don't know where it's at. So he hired like an Uber. You know what an Uber is? You know, he hired a coach, a carriage and a horse, and he said, please drive me to the next town. So he paid his money, and they went on their way. And they would stop at a town, and they would look, and he would say, no, driver, this is not the town. It's not the town. Here's more money. And he'd drive him a little bit farther. And as he drove him, every time he got to a town, it wasn't the right town. 3 days it took him, till finally he came to the town of Jackson, Michigan. And when he got to Jackson, Michigan, he looked around and he said, this is it. This is the town that God showed me. And so he went ahead and he said, what can I do? I know I'll go to the local blacksmith, and I will share the message with him. So he ended up going to, do I have a picture of them? No, oh yeah, right here. This is Daniel Palmer. He was the blacksmith, and this is his wife, Abigail. And he got to the blacksmith shop, and he said, sir, he said, I have some I have some information I'd like to share with you. Would that be possible? And Daniel Palmer says, as long as I can keep working, that's perfectly okay with me. So Captain Bates put his chart up on the wall, and he started to talk to him about Bible truth, and he told him all about the Sabbath. And by the end of his presentation, Daniel Palmer said, you have the truth. So he went home and he shared it with his wife, and his wife accepted the truth. Well, now Captain Bates went and stayed at their house. And he could only stay so long, and he ended up having to go all the way back home again. So he went back home, and 2 years went by. And Captain Bates says, you know what? This Sabbath message just isn't getting out fast enough. I need to go back to Michigan, and I need to share the truth. So he came all the way back to Michigan, and he stayed with Daniel Palmer. And that night, this time, in his dream, he saw himself on a ship, because what was his work? He was a captain, right? He saw himself on a ship, and he saw himself going west, and he was told, get off at Port Battle Creek. Now, when you came into town today, did you see any big oceans? No. So there's no big oceans, but there is a Battle Creek, right? So he got up in the morning and he said to his friend Dan Palmer, he says, is there a Battle Creek around here? And Dan says, yeah, there is. It's about 40 miles west of here. You can get a train ticket and you can be there in just a couple hours. So he said, okay. So he went and he bought the train ticket. The next morning he got up bright and early and he went to the train station and he got on the train, and then the train took off. Can you help me make a train sound? And oh, did you hear that?
Oh, that was a
There
real
you
one.
go.
Perfect timing.
So he was on that train, and as he's going along, he says, Lord, now you have told me where I'm supposed to go, but you didn't tell me who I was supposed to talk to. And God, in an out loud voice, said to him, when you get to Battle Creek, go to the postmaster. That's where the post office is. Do you ever go to the post office? Just go to the post office and talk to the postmaster and ask him who is the most honest man in town. Well, he couldn't wait for the train to get to his station, right? Finally got to the station, and he jumps off and he runs to the post office and he says to the postmaster, who is the most honest man in this town? And the postmaster said, well, that's easy. That is a man by the name of David Hewitt. Now, David Hewitt was a peddler. Who knows what a peddler is? It's a person who sells things door to door. Okay? And when he would sell things door to door, if he overcharged you even 1 penny. Now, did they have cars back then? No. How did they get from place to place? And walking, right? So if he was charged him too much, even 1 penny, he would turn around and he would walk 12 miles to go back and return that 1 penny. Okay, so was he honest?
Yeah.
He was honest. So Captain Bates said, okay, so where does this man live? So the postmaster told him it was a couple of blocks from the post office. So he charges over there and he goes up and he knocks on the door. And he says, David Hewitt says, hi, can I help you? And he says, yes, I understand that you are the most honest man in this town. And if that's true, I have Bible truth I want to share with you. And he said, well, why don't you come in, have breakfast with us, and then after breakfast you can have our morning worship. So Captain Bates was like, and he never let any grass grow under his feet. He was gonna share what he knew. So after breakfast, Captain Bates took and put his poster up on the wall, just like this one here. And he started to talk to David Hewitt about things in the Bible. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever done a Bible study before, but normally when I do a Bible study, I take a lesson and I cover one subject. And I say, I'll see you next week, people. And they say, okay. So I come back and then I do the next subject. And I might do that for 6 months, okay, before they finish the lessons. But Captain Bates, he said, oh no, I may never see these people again. I'm going to tell them everything. So he taught them everything that was on the chart. He talked to them about the sanctuary in heaven. He talked about Jesus being our intercessory priest. He talked to them about the 2,300 days. He talked to them about the Sabbath. He talked to them about how much God loves them and how God was the creator. He talked to them about all these things. And well, let me just say this. When Captain Bates started, it was morning, early morning. He continued his morning worship until lunchtime. Do you imagine having worship that long? Had lunch, came back at it again. He continued his morning worship from lunch until supper time. But Captain Bates wasn't done yet. After supper, he started again. And when the sun hit the horizon, David Hewitt and his wife Olive ended up accepting every single truth that he had shared.
Maybe just to get him out of there.
Well, then, because they were honest people, they invited their neighbors. So their neighbors would come and worship with them, and they shared all the truth with them. And then pretty soon people were hanging out the windows because there was too many people and the house was too small. So they built a meeting house, which was about the size of a 2-car garage. And they were worshiping in that when, I think it was 1854, when James and Ellen White ended up coming to Battle Creek. They brought the publishing work with them here. And so they were in that meeting house for about 5 years, 3 to 5 years, and then they built the second meeting house, which is the bigger one that we have a replica of over there. And then it ended up at the second meeting house when the congregation came together, because did you know that for more than 15 years our church didn't have a name? Could you imagine not having a name? And I'd say, hey you, hey you, because you wouldn't have a name. Well, James White couldn't give people a name of our group because our group was afraid to have a name. So finally they had to agree to have a name, and it was this man right here, David Hewitt, who made the suggestion that we take our 2 most prominent teachings, the Seventh-day Sabbath and the return of Jesus, and put them together and call ourselves Seventh-day Adventists. So if somebody comes up to you and says, what church do you go to and why do you go there? You say, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. And they say, well, why? You have 2 of your major beliefs. You can start a Bible study just on the name of your church. So that's the story of the most honest man in town.
Thank you.